Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'll tell you something. This, again, is one of those episodes where if I don't just start recording, then I'll never get it done. And I wanted to start off by saying this. First of all, thank you, of course, for the listeners. I greatly appreciate it, as always. And same thing again with the Substack followers. There are more over there, basically growing by the day, which is great. There is just so much going on that I can't keep up. I'll put it that way. It's exhausting, as one might expect, and I think also that it highlights how a great deal of these accounts that you see online are ghost accounts. And what I mean by that is they'll have one online persona or one online name, but there might be 20, 10, maybe even 50 or more individuals with access to that account, and then they all post on it all day long, every day, regarding, again, stories, videos, audio, you name it, regardless of the subject. I don't have any of that, as one might imagine, which is why I'm typically only online during the early morning hours, and then I, of course, resort to the show or writing Substacks or whatever to get some information out that comes my way from, again, listeners of the show, which I'm greatly appreciative of. But it's still overwhelming. I mean, the other day I got flooded with all kinds of information, and I thought to myself, I've got to, of course, bring this up on the show, but at the exact same time, I have to write about certain things on Substack, and I want to make sure and push it out on Gab and X and XYZ. So, it sounds like I'm whining or complaining. I'm not really. I'm just saying that because things are moving so quickly, it's impossible for your average individual like myself to get all of this information out and have people absorb it. It's just never ending. And it can take a singular individual all day long. I mean, all day of staring at a computer and, again, just bouncing around the internet and trying to bring as much information to anybody who follows them as much as possible. But it would take an individual all day long, which, again, is exactly why you see those massive accounts with those, huge numbers of subscribers, is because those individuals have ghostwriters. Those individuals pay individuals to post on their accounts and get information out all day long, every single day on those social media accounts. So, again, I would just say, again, thanks for listening to the show. I really appreciate it. It's exhausting. and it's moving so fast that there's no way that I can get all of the information out in a timely order, because by the time I get it out, something else has already happened. I mean, that's the world that we live in now, and that's the state of consciousness for those of us who are awake. For those who are asleep, they have no idea what the hell's going on. And I pity those people, I truly do. But the information here is just overwhelming. And it's almost too much to even bring up. But I'm going to stop rambling here. I want to start off here by reading this post. This was on Gab the other day. I thought it was very well done. Kind of a nice reminder when it comes to information like this. And of course, we are at the precipice here, I think, of all of this information, and the illegality is everywhere. And you're seeing everybody react particular ways. And then that's motivating all the political establishments to, again, behave the way that they're behaving, teachers' unions, etc. I'll get into that a little bit later. But let me read this particular post. It said the following here: protect your mind and control your emotions. It says, many high-profile influencers aren't actors by trade, but they are trained performers through theater, broadcast media, or persuasion coaching, which is a normal feature of modern political influence. Effect on audiences. They shape perception. Audiences respond emotionally before thinking critically. They amplify engagement. Polarizing statements, memorable sound bites, and dramatic framing get attention. They control the narrative. Repetition, rhetorical structures, and reactive framing can make their arguments stick even in the face of counterpoints. They can manipulate beliefs and emotion at scale. Debate, persuasion, and media skills multiply the impact. A well-crafted statement can reach millions in seconds and trigger reactions, sharing, and discussion making influence exponential. Polarizing or emotionally charged messages are amplified faster than neutral messages. Trained influencers can shape perception not just in a small room, but across millions of viewers and followers online, giving them outsized impact in public discourse, such as Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Ben Shapiro, child actor, Al Franken, others. They said, protect your mind and control your emotions. How? This is the important part. You can still listen to controversial influencers like Candace Owens without being manipulated if you approach their content deliberately. First, recognize that these people are trained persuaders, skilled in rhetoric, media performance, and emotional framing. Awareness of their techniques creates a natural mental distance. Next, practice active skepticism. Separate fact from opinion, evidence from anecdote, and emotional reaction from reasoned judgment. Pause before reacting. Observe your feelings and name them, anger, frustration, or excitement, without letting them dictate your actions. And then it says control your exposure. Avoid binging, take notes, and slow playback if needed. Always contextualize their message. Consider the audience, platform incentives, and motivations behind what's being said. Finally, balance their content with neutral or opposing perspectives to strengthen critical thinking. By doing this, you treat their messaging like a performance to study, not a script to follow. You remain informed, engaged, and emotionally centered, able to listen without losing control of your mind or your reactions." Unquote. This, too, is something that the left has no grasp of either. There are plenty of people on the right, so to speak, who have no grasp of that, but there are endless individuals on the left who have no grasp of it either. And I'd like to start off, frankly, by stating this and reading this. This was tossed my way this morning, and this is from the Ohio Education Association, which is Ohio's basically teachers' union, so to speak, state-sponsored teachers' union. And they put out a memo here for immediate release on, again, January 15th, and it says the following. Ohio Education Association, keep ICE away from Ohio schools. Now again, telling people to keep ICE away from Ohio schools directly implies, in my opinion, that they should go out and find ICE agents and keep them away from schools, or that they should do something on school property to keep ICE agents out. Now, I knew that this would happen, and I've spoken about it on the show and written about it on Substack before. It was only a matter of time before they actually draft a memo like this and send it out to every single school district, because, again, every single school district in Ohio just received this. I'll just read the statement here, and then I'll dive in a little deeper. It says the following, again, Columbus, January 15th, 2026. With U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE operations continuing in communities across Ohio and across the country, Ohio Education Association President Jeff Wensing has issued the following statement, quote, "The Ohio Education Association strongly opposes any presence or enforcement actions by Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE in or around Ohio's public schools." In or around. Again, they have no legal authority to obstruct justice, but this is the implication. And we know again that they are likely to do this, that they are likely to get involved and violate the law. Again, they're making the direct implication that that's what they want to see happen. He goes on, says schools must remain safe, welcoming spaces where every student, regardless of immigration status, can learn, grow, and thrive without fear. Well, yes and no. See, this is where, again, you don't separate families. If the parents of a child are illegal, then they have to go into the school and find the child because the parents have been detained, lawfully detained, because they're here illegally. So you send the child back with the parents, and they are deported. That's the way that it goes. He goes on and says, no child should be afraid to go to school, and no school employee should be placed in the position of navigating immigration enforcement. Well, then don't be here illegally. He continued and said the presence of ICE in schools undermines trust, disrupts learning, and creates trauma for children and families. Again, to make such a statement publicly should show everybody that these are criminal organizations. They are not interested in the law. They're not interested in following the law. They aren't interested in enforcing the law, or there even being consequences for breaking the law. They just say this and then blindly believe it because they actually believe it. He finished up and said, we urge federal, state, and local leaders to uphold policies that keep immigration enforcement out of schools and to refrain that schools are places of learning, not fear. Again, it's emotionally driven, not fact-driven here, which is typical. He wraps up and says, quote, the Ohio Education Association, continues to stand with educators, students, and families to protect the right of every child to a safe, supportive, and inclusive public education, unquote. And then at the bottom it says again about the OEA. They represent approximately 120,000 teachers, faculty members, and support professionals who work in Ohio schools, colleges, and universities to help improve public education and the lives of Ohio's children. OEA members provide professional services to benefit students, schools, and the public in virtually every position needed to run Ohio's schools. Well, joke's on them. If the Ohio Education Association ceased to exist tomorrow, no one would be the wiser. Nobody would know. Teachers would be able to save money, but no one would know that they were gone, which means, again, they're a criminal organization. Now, like I said earlier, you know that a memo like that goes out, and all of these slaves who are members of the union will read that, certainly if they're left-leaning, because why else would you be a member of a union? And then they'll believe it, and then they'll interpret it themselves any way that they see fit, which again basically means tell students, don't worry, you're safe. I'll stand between you and an ICE agent. And I certainly hope that they do, because if they do, they're going to get thrown right onto their face. Their teeth are going to get busted out, and they'll be arrested for obstructing justice. That's what I'd love to see. So again, as a quick little reminder, if they do such a thing, then they're breaking federal and state law, specifically federally, 8 U.S.C. subsection 1324, harboring or concealing undocumented individuals. Yes, American schools, that's a crime. You don't get to do that. 18 U.S.C. subsection 1505 / subsection 1519, obstruction of federal enforcement or destruction of records. Again, we don't have any paperwork on this illegal kid. Well, if the feds are there, then they already know that you're harboring illegal aliens. And then 18 U.S.C. subsection 371, conspiracy to commit a federal offense. Again, you know that American schools are doing this right now. You know that they are. But who's being arrested? Who's being arrested? Again, a judge got arrested and charged for obstruction. That was great. Glad she's off the bench and has been disbarred. Good. City council member again in New York City just the other day, same thing, which is great. But what about school boards? What about superintendents? You have school board members, and I've played the audio on the show. You have school board members all across the state of Ohio specifically, and they're doing it everywhere. And they were all being told, again specifically in Ohio, to sign a memo, basically, again, agreeing with the Ohio Department of Education, but more specifically the Department of Education at the federal level, that they're going to do away with all of their DEI policy, language, etc., etc. And getting them to sign it was like pulling teeth. They openly admitted in board meetings on the record on YouTube that they were not going to sign it, that many of them didn't, and that they didn't care and come and arrest me. Then yes, go arrest them. Arrest them. Again, as far as Ohio laws and ICE are concerned, Ohio Revised Code subsection 2921.31, obstructing official business, and Ohio Revised Code subsection 2921.32, obstructing justice. Now, again, I put a Substack together about all of this here, and there was another memo that went out from the Ohio Education Association, along with, and certainly in partnership with, the National Education Association. Again, both money launderers, both criminal organizations, shut them down. You're talking about the RICO statute here. You know that the education associations, whether they be state or national, are working with these Somalis as well. They have to be. They're donating to their campaigns. Well, if they're all donating, and that money, again, even a piece of it comes from taxpayers or is illegal, well, then you have to take down the groups that are actually filtering and siphoning off the money to these individuals. But there was a second memo again that went out here, and it said the following: Dear OEA local leader, activist, or staff member. So they're openly calling their members activists. That should tell you all you need to know. It says the Ohio Education Association is committed to ensuring that our schools remain safe, welcoming places for every student and educator. In light of questions we have received about immigration enforcement activity, we want to share guidance on how educators should respond if U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, is present in or near Ohio schools. Again, I can't believe that they actually put pen to paper regarding this. They should have just said nothing. But they're openly telling people, even if ICE agents are near a school, we'll define near. What does that mean? Down the road, down the block, around the block, on the other side of town. They're trying to militarize American so-called educators, quote unquote, which we know that they aren't by and large. They're political activists and they're brainwashed dummies. But they're trying to move these people like pawns on a chessboard to actually interfere with ICE agents, which will lead to their arrest, which will lead to their removal of their licensure. And that will happen. And that's probably already happened. But instead of saying, stay away, they have a job to do, and you could be in serious legal peril for the rest of your life and lose your licensure, no. They weaponize them against law enforcement, which means, again, it's a militant fraction of a communist government. This is the deep state, 100%. It goes on here. It says educators should refer immigration enforcement officers to their administrator. Our role is to educate, support students, and follow district policy and the law. If ICE is present at or near your school, and here come the bullet points, do not share information about students, families, or coworkers. Well, that's obstruction. So they're asking them in the very first bullet point to obstruct justice. If a law enforcement person has just cause to ask a legal question, then they have to answer, because if they don't, they're obstructing. They're concealing information. It says, the next one, do not consent to entry on behalf of the school. If they have a warrant, you can't keep the door closed. They get to come in. Immediately notify school administration and follow district procedures. Ask for identification and documentation and direct agents to school administration. Only a judicial warrant signed by a judge, not an administrative ICE warrant, may authorize entry into non-public areas of a school or access to student records. Well, yes and no. It depends on what's going on in the building and what laws are being broken in the building. If they have evidence that there are school officials illegally harboring illegal aliens, then they get to come in. Period. And then it says, do not physically interfere. Yet, all their previous suggestions basically said interfere. It says student privacy. Student information is protected under FERPA and Ohio law. Immigration status should not be requested or disclosed. Well, again, FERPA doesn't apply, and neither does Ohio law if they're illegal. That doesn't matter. It says supporting students then. Continue to provide a calm, supportive learning environment. Refer students or family concerns to counselors or administrators. Yes, of course. If you have concerns, if you are unaware how to respond in a specific situation, follow your district's guidance. Contact your local association leadership, again, government, Reach out to your OEA LRC for additional support, and then helpful legal resources below are updates and resources regarding immigration. The information is from partners and reliable sources, but not all of this has been thoroughly vetted by OEA's legal department. Always consult with your labor relations consultant when taking local action. It says National Immigration Law Center, Schools and Immigration Enforcement, American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, Know Your Rights, Schools and ICE. And know your rights if ICE visits your home. OEA will continue to advocate for policies that protect students, educators, and public schools, and we will share updates if guidance changes. Thank you for the critical work you do every day to support Ohio's students in solidarity, because that's what a gay communist would say at the end of a letter. Jeff Wensing, President, Ohio Education Association, 225 East Broad Street, Box 2550, Columbus, Ohio, 43216. Yuck. If I speak too much about this, I'll just find myself again being remarkably repetitive. But I will say this, the part that continues to baffle me is that you have endless conservative, God-loving parents who are sending their children to these environments, even when the head of the snake, so to speak, certainly again at the state level, at least from an optics standpoint, puts out a memo like that and multiple memos like that. And then they send their children into those environments expecting their children to be safe. The sheer memo proves that the organization as a whole, whatever you want to call American education, which it's not, that clearly they are not interested in following the law, which means, why on earth does anyone believe that their child would be safe in those environments if they're not interested in following the law? They don't follow their own policy. They can't follow their own discipline policy properly. But they're telling their own members to actively seek out ICE agents in or around a school. Again, it's a rather broad geographic word there. What does near a school mean? But this again, this is exactly what the entire so-called profession has turned itself into. It is political activism because it's a Bolshevistic, communistic arm of the deep state. And the people actually are so stupid that they pay into the system. Again, people's tax dollars are going to these systems. They're going right into these districts that are doing and saying these kinds of things. And like Dr. Luther Smith and I were discussing in the last episode, and I've said it numerous times too, the white female liberal is hands down one of the dumbest humans on the face of the planet. And this right here, this next little article just pretty much proves it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this came from Red State. And let's see, this was approximately 6 days ago, 5 days ago, 6 days ago. It says, Dear white liberals, blacks and Hispanics want no part of your anti-ICE protests. The author said at one of the anti-Trump No Kings 50501 Invisible rallies I covered last year, I overheard one white woman complain about the lack of young people and people of color coming out to protest the evil President King, Donald Trump, and his ICE enforcement to rein in illegal immigration. While I cannot speak for young people, as a person of color, I know for a fact that blacks and Hispanics are pretty much over affluent white liberal females, AWFL, and their self-centered campaigns against not only the duly elected president that many of us voted for, but against the rule of law. Yeah. Yep, they're just not around. Again, in the town where I live, in the pictures that were taken, which again were taken in an effort to make it look like it was a bunch of people, it was probably less than 24 people. Again, it's just old white liberals and then lonely white female liberals. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Now, I want to keep going here on Ohio schools and bring a few updates here regarding a couple of school districts and a couple of school boards that I've commented on on a regular basis, certainly in the central Ohio area. Again, we understand the Somali fraud is out there, no doubt about it. And I'll get more specifically into that here in just a second. But first, I want to play this. This was brought to my attention regarding Upper Arlington and their school district in Upper Arlington, Ohio. The Nadia Satiani gal, of course, won her election after a student up there, of course, killed himself, unfortunately. And she's directly related to bullying this child and attempting, of course, to get him expelled, even though she had apparently direct influence with administrators in the middle school that led to his suspension, when apparently the kid has no history of discipline whatsoever. With all of that said, she was sworn in, and she decided to give a speech. Now, when I watched this board meeting, I couldn't help but think, just again, looking at the faces and the behavior of these, again, liberal females, and even the ballless men who, again, sit on these boards and do whatever it is that they do and go through the motions and make it look like their school district is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they don't break any law whatsoever, and they're the most ethically and morally sound people on the face of the planet. I couldn't help but think that these are basically members of a cult. They're cult members. The way that they smile, the way that they applaud, the things that they say, I'm telling you, it's full-blown brainwashing. And this woman is going to get sued into the ground, and I want you to hear her voice. Because again, after she gets sworn in, and she has her 2 kids up there with her, and her husband, it's like she's, again, it's like she's being sworn in as being a senator of the United States. And she isn't. She's a pathetic school board member. And again, the importance that these people apparently put on such a position is astounding to me. But she took the microphone and she, again, decided to give a speech. So I want you to hear her tone. And she gets a little teary-eyed when she's, thanking people for the support, and she cares about everybody and blah, blah, blah. She's a sociopath. She's a full-blown narcissistic sociopath. And her husband is a psychiatrist at The Ohio State University. The irony. It's overwhelming. So here's this Miss Santiani, or Mrs. Satiani gal, in 3, 2, 1.
I just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you to my family, because they are... I said quick. They are the reason I get to continue doing this work. My Dylan is a source of joy, and his so many wonderful, wonderful gifts. But the one that's getting out my head tonight is anytime things go wrong, he's able to turn it around really fast and just bring the light back into our lives. My son Roshan, whose heart is the biggest of any person I know, he can just tell by or whatever it is. So he's a wonderful young man. And my husband, Anand, who has allowed me to be my authentic self and help me build my agency, my autonomy, and be there to, in the words of Dr. Gottman, fight the dragon together. Whatever the dragon is that we're fighting individually, we fight it together. I wanted to say thank you to them for being here, and of course to our community for electing me. And I said quick, so that's where I'm going to stop. Thank you.
The crying. That long pause was her, again, holding back tears. I don't understand it. I don't get it. There's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in baseball. Why are you crying over being elected to a position you have no business even sitting on? You should be thrown off the board by the state immediately. You should be sued into the ground. And she's crying. Like it's an honor for her. You have to be kidding me. She targeted a white male minor, allegedly, who killed himself. And then, like seals at the zoo, the 4 board members behind her just start clapping with huge smiles on their faces. Oh, we're so glad to have you here. What is wrong with these people? I'm telling you, it's a goddamn cult. They're cults. These environments are cults. They don't know what lies in the real world because they don't live in the real world. They are in the matrix 100%. Their entire job description has been completely altered. It's just mind-boggling to me. Now, at the end of the meeting, and this was one of the major reasons why this was also brought to my attention, is a member of the community came up to the microphone and decided to read some passages from a book that was apparently assigned from a list of books, but was assigned apparently in a classroom setting, that is titled "I'll Give You the Sun" by a Jandy Nelson. And they read excerpts from this book, and I'm going to play the audio for you right now. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
I'm Maria. I am the parent of 2 graduates of Upper Arlington High School and 2 current students. Last week, one of my students was assigned this book. I request that the board discontinue use of this book tonight due to graphic sexual content. I will read excerpts from the book that culminate in 2 14-year-olds engaging in mutual masturbation. Brian catches me by my shirt, whips me around, and with one strong hand flat against my chest, he pushes me against a tree and kisses me so hard I go blind. I run my hands through his hair, finally, then bring his head to mine and kiss him so hard our teeth collide, planets collide, kissing him now for each and every time we didn't all summer long. I know absolutely everything about how to kiss him too, how to make his whole body tremble just from biting his lip, how to make him moan right inside my mouth by whispering his name, how to make his head fall back, his spine arch, and how to make him groan through his teeth. I place my hands under his shirt because I can now. I can do everything I've thought about. I touch the river of his stomach, his chest and shoulders. He whispers the word yeah under his breath, which makes me shudder, which makes him shudder. And then his hands travel under my shirt, and the demanding, hungry feel of them on my skin burns me to the ground. I lift up his shirt, slip it over his talking head, then take off my own and step into him so we're all lined up, legs to legs, groin to groin, bare chest to bare chest. We fit perfectly. I kiss him slowly and deeply. I follow his gaze to my bare stomach, then lower to where there's no hiding how I'm feeling. I watch his hand travel down. Want to? He asks, and I'm a flood in a paper cup. Totally, I say, knowing without a doubt what he means. And then our hands are on our belts, unbuckling. From across the room, I watch his back, unable to see much. But then his neck arches, and I can see his face, his eyes all swimming and wild, locking with mine. And it's like we're kissing again, but from across the room this time, kissing even more intensely than in the woods, where our pants stayed on. I didn't know you could kiss with your eyes. Then my mother bursts in. I thought I'd locked the door. Her confused gaze darts from me to Brian, his hands, my hands, fumbling, shoving, zipping.
Now, I don't know this for certain. Well, first of all, I'll put it this way. HB 8 is law. Having that book assigned to students or to a student, either from a list or a simple, you have to do a book report on this one, that breaks the law. Because if they know what the content is of the book and they're still assigning it, they're breaking the law. Now, is that a school board problem? Well, yeah, they're responsible, no doubt about it. They need to update their policies. They need to push out a memo that says, get rid of these books. Do not assign them under any circumstance because you will be violating the law. But as I lay out in the Substack article, what has to happen is every single parent who now knows who that teacher is who assigned that book has to file against their license. They just broke the law. Fill out a police report for them breaking the law. Do both of those things. And then, of course, contact the Ohio Ethics Commission regarding the board and their either action or inaction regarding all of the above. Now, my question is this. Are romantic novels, like the ones you would see in a grocery store or something, or even in a bookstore back in the day, that would have a man or a woman embracing whatever. I mean, these like paperback romantic novels that would just sit on shelves. It's not like I've, wandered into the romantic novel section of a bookstore or something, but I mean, I remember what these covers would look like. My question is do you find those books in American schools, and do you find those books in American school libraries? Or is it just these books, again, that include gays who apparently just jack each other off all the time? And that's considered normal. That's your average book project in today's world. Is that the case? Now, as one might imagine, this is directly tied to social emotional learning. This is directly tied to all of this mood regulation nonsense. All the game playing, all the perversions, all the normalization of that. This again is why people cannot read, write, spell, comprehend. And it's also why they are actively being groomed by an entire government system, sexually groomed as well. This article was tossed my way by a friend of mine, and this was from Newsmax, apparently within one of their magazines, and it says, America, dangerous new teaching fad invades classrooms. Social emotional learning wastes time on self-examination instead of basic reading and writing. Now, social emotional learning and all of this nonsense curriculum is not new. This has been around since the 60s, believe it or not, if not before that. But the 60s and 70s certainly didn't help, and it was even back then when you had even Democrat congressmen and women, specifically men, openly warning people about social emotional learning and what lies ahead with it, because it's only going to get worse, and then as we know and as we've seen, it takes over the entire profession. This is, again, where you get a lot of the sexual perversion. This is where you get this idea that everybody's broken. Everybody's experienced trauma, and now we have to sift through all of that and figure out what's really going on. I'm going to read a little bit from this. It's long, but just a couple of passages here. It says, public education is a disaster. This year's National Assessment on Educational Progress scores the nation's report card tell us that 32% of 12th grade students don't read at even the most basic level. Only 35% are proficient and 45% don't do math at the most basic level. Only 22% do math proficiently, the lowest level in 20 years. Scores are also down in 4th and 8th grades. What, one wonders, is being taught in all those hours that K-12 students sit in classrooms? It sure isn't reading or math. I know about critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that President Donald Trump and his Department of Education are doing their best to get those subjects removed from classrooms. But one more culprit for taking up time and energy that ought to be spent on reading math, science, and history that we don't hear so much about is the universally pervasive SEL, social emotional learning. Social emotional learning is now in almost every classroom in the country. That includes many private schools and after-school programs. It provides a little brief history here, at least based on their look at things. It says, it is the therapeutic approach to education in which teachers conduct something akin to group therapy in the classroom. It teaches radical empathy and constant emotional self-examination instead of actual external subject material. That empathy is used to indoctrinate students in various left-wing ideologies, from climate change extremism to support for transgender ideology to globalism, to, of course, queers jacking each other off. It says, when SEL began in the early 1990s at Yale, it had some legitimacy. It was invented by Dr. James Comer in the 1960s as a program to teach underprivileged minority students in the inner city of New Haven how to regulate their emotions, make decisions, and behave appropriately in school, which is something that most middle-class families convey during childhood, but which these underprivileged students did not learn at home. I think we know why. In the 1990s, with the influence of Daniel Goldman's book, Emotional Intelligence, huge problem, at peak strength, CASEL, the Collaborative of Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, was formed. Its goal was to spread the pedagogy to everyone. Arguably, it started out doing that for innocent enough reasons, true belief that emotional regulation and good decision-making were beneficial skills. It took until the late 20-teens for SEL to become mostly political. SEL goes hand in glove with trauma-informed education, quote unquote, in which all students are treated as if they have undergone some trauma. And this right here is a nice summary point regarding this too. SEL sabotages the parent-child relationship largely by undermining the moral authority a parent has and should have over values in the home. Teachers gain power over student thinking and do so the often very progressive counselors that most schools have brought in. It says, quote, SEL isn't just a curriculum trend, it was built into education decades ago and gets renamed each time people catch on. SEL treats children as agents of social change rather than as individuals to be educated. And it's big business, too. It's not just indoctrination, it's not just full-blown brainwashing, and it's not, again, designed to pick up the slack for stupid teachers who can't teach a subject. It's designed, again, to create money and launder it. It says in the middle of this article, how big is the market? It says the global SEL market is estimated at $9 billion, with the largest online SEL platforms handling the personal information of tens of millions of children. Among the most widely used are EverFi, 45 million students, Second Step, 26 million students, and Panorama Education, 15 million students. Nearly all of them and the metrics they track are castle-aligned, quote-unquote. Here's how the article wraps up. It says, quote, the problem with SEL is not indoctrination, but the permission structure to fail at our basic responsibilities, unquote. As the NAEP scores indicate, schools are failing, and only a small number of people and groups are looking at the role SEL plays in that. Time to homeschool, unquote. Yes, it most certainly is. Gay book projects, social emotional learning, and with all of that and everything else that comes with it, lowered spelling, lowered writing, lowered literacy, lowered comprehension. The purposeful dumbing down of America. Now, what does this lead to? Also, it leads to schools losing their accredited status. And that's exactly what's happened here in St. Louis, Missouri. They are no longer an accredited school district. This is from their Fox 2 news outlet. This was sent my way. Thank you for sending it. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
A sudden shift in state oversight has St. Louis public school families demanding answers. Tonight's board meeting drew a crowd wondering about the state's decision. Fox 2's Taylor Harris looks at what all of this means for parents and students.
Tuesday night, families, teachers, and staff packed the board meeting just hours after a sudden state vote pushed St. Louis public schools into provisional accreditation. A 6-1 decision that district leaders say blindsided them and immediately sparked backlash from educators who told Fox 2 the timing makes no sense. They say accreditation changes normally takes years, not hours, and question why districts facing similar challenges were not downgraded. Under Missouri's own accountability framework, accreditation shifts ties to academic outcomes were not expected until 2027. Instead, the board used a rarely applied compliance provision, prompting the St. Louis Public Schools Teacher Union to call the move political. Even the state's own education commissioner warned against using accreditation as punishment.
Provisional accreditation does not impact the district's ability to operate schools, educate students, graduate seniors, or maintain local governance. Schools remain open, instruction continues, and the district operations are uninterrupted.
Collins Adams stated how the board intends to fight the downgrade and prove progress.
And the school district stands strong. We will be able to change this. We'll be able to do what we need to be able to correct this. We need your support.
Residents and guardians shared their opinions on the decision.
I was a little mad, to be quite honest, because I think our district was targeted unnecessarily. However, I want to thank you for giving your statement and telling us you have a plan. I really appreciate that.
Also, St. Louis Public Schools reported declining enrollment at all 6 schools damaged by the May 2025 tornado, and the district revealed the list of applicants for the open school board seat, announcing those interviews will be live streamed for the public. Reporting in downtown St. Louis, I'm Taylor Harris, Fox 2 News.
They lost their accreditation status because of a tornado from approximately a year ago. Give me a break. Even Dr. Luther Smith sent this to me also, along with another family member. And he said, that's not what's going on. They lost their status because they academically suck. Foreigners are leaving in droves, which means their enrollment is in the tank. Those are all the reasons why they've lost their status. And of course, they probably can't fill out the paperwork properly. In fact, there's one more reason: homeschooling. Homeschooling is dramatically increasing, and almost everybody is well aware of this. I was also sent this article again from Dr. Luther Smith. This was back from November of 2024. Homeschooling in Missouri, a quiet but seismic shift. It says over the past few years, education in Missouri has undergone a quiet but seismic shift. What's most interesting about this change is that it's happening outside of schools. Today, 1 in 6 school-aged children in the state are homeschooled, according to new research by Amy Shelton and myself. That puts the number of children educated outside of traditional public and private schools at 61,000, an immense increase from pre-pandemic levels. Historically, homeschool rates, in Missouri hovered around 3%, roughly 1 in 30 students. Our research shows the rate of homeschooling has nearly doubled since the pandemic began, and these numbers may be conservative. Yeah, and that was again from a couple of years ago. It's only increased since, and it's only going to get bigger. There's this point too, which I also think is interesting, which is, of course, the conflict between teachers and students when it comes to who knows what and how often they actually express what they know within a classroom setting, because as we know, with the advent of artificial intelligence and the Great Awakening and content acquisition, that basically the entire school system is now irrelevant. Why even utilize it? Why even have it? When information again can be so readily available, and individuals again can engage in quantitative and qualitative reasoning and analysis and figure out what the truth is about the world that we live in. This, of course, is creating massive conflict between students and their teachers. So there was this article also, which was sent my way by Jesse James, and it was from inews.co.uk, and it says the following: "We're teachers. How to tell if your child is falling for conspiracy theories. Fake news and misinformation are causing chaos in the classroom, and experts say every student should be taught critical thinking." Now, I'm not saying I agree with every single part of this particular article. However, what is interesting is they do say this. It says secondary school teachers now believe that critical thinking is the single most important skill they can share with their students, above problem-solving, communication, creativity, and collaboration skills, according to new BBC bite-sized research polling more than 400 teachers. And it says this: "But many teachers struggle as they report almost half of schools lack the resources to teach media literacy, while a third believe that they are constrained by the curriculum." Well, yes. The answer to that is yes. They don't know how to teach media literacy because they're the ones who have bought into the lies as instructors and as adults. They've been indoctrinated their entire life too, which means how would they know what the truth is? How would they know, again, how to teach what the truth is? Not to mention, they've taken cell phones away from everybody. They've basically taken the internet away from everybody. Now everybody has to use their Google Chromebooks, depending on the country or the state in which one is operating in. But the problem with this article is basically the following. What it says is that, sort of in summary, that if there's conflict, the fault lies specifically with the students, because the students are more likely to fall for quote-unquote misinformation. And anytime, again, an author uses that, you can basically see the bend of the article. It's certainly left-leaning. But at the exact same time, It's not that they're believing necessarily misinformation, it's that the instructor is likely believing things that are not real. And then when the student brings the truth to the instructor, that's where the conflict always exists. This instructor looks at the student and says, well, that's not true. Where'd you find that? And then they say, well, on the internet. And they say, well, that's not true. And then the student says, well, yeah, it is. Look at this documentary or look at this book or look at this particular subject. And then they say, yeah, we're not teaching that in this classroom. Which means, again, if you even attempt to bring up the truth in a classroom setting, you're going to get shut down. In particular, if it goes against the mainstream curriculum that exists. One of the teachers here in this article openly admits it too. This is from the Derby High School in Bury, Manchester. And it says the following here, this particular instructor did anyway. They said last September, the school introduced pouches for phones so no pupil can access their mobile in school time or on trips. Quote, that's empowered us and our young people, unquote, she explains. Quote, we control the way that children receive news, unquote. Yes, because you're gatekeepers. You're gatekeepers of stupidity, and you're doing whatever you have to do to make sure that students don't learn more than you. Because heaven forbid if they do, the role of an instructor would become obsolete. But we're already there. It's already the case. The role of the instructor is not obsolete for students who are mentally handicapped and physically disabled. You still need someone to watch them during the day. But what you don't need, as I've said a million times, are able-bodied and able-minded students within these environments being controlled and even worse, dumbed down in an effort to essentially be at the exact same level as their lower-achieving peers. Also a huge problem. Imagine how more intelligent students would be if they just left the system altogether. Sky would be the limit. In fact, they wouldn't know their limitations because they wouldn't have any. Now, this was just sent to me, kind of also proving my point about the brainwashing, certainly, and low level of literacy. This has to do with Upper Arlington High School, again, the same school district that I mentioned earlier, and apparently they're going to do themselves a little We Don't Like ICE walkout event. This was apparently put together by a high school female student whose both parents apparently are also school teachers within the district. It says the following at the top, Upper Arlington High School, we are essential to stopping ICE terror. Walk out, ICE out. No hate, no fear, refugees are welcome here. I hate these people. I just do. I just can't. I can't do it. It says Ohio has seen an increased and unwelcome presence of ICE. No. They're very welcome. Especially in Columbus with Operation Buckeye. ICE actions have torn families apart. People in our community, including classmates and neighbors, have been forcibly taken by ICE agents, and this does not make us safer. Say it once, say it twice. We won't put up with ICE. God, these people are stupid. It says, recently in Minneapolis, a federal ICE agent shot and killed Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old woman, during an ICE operation, sparking protest and national outcry. Across the country, people are standing up against ICE's tactics. On January 20th at 2 p.m., students across the nation will participate in a walkout. Soon after, all working citizens will perform their own walkout at 4 p.m. A walkout! Is it the 1960s? They had stand-ins, but this is a walkout. So you're supporting illegality by even breaking your own policy. Every student who does this should be suspended or expelled, but they won't be. The district will support it, 100%. This is what democracy looks like, they'll say. Oh, it's mob rule, all right. You got that right. What can I do? And then it says safety information. Tell your friends and family about the walkout. Let your teacher know if you plan on joining. Bring a sign if you would like. School resource officers will be there to keep students safe. Face coverings are allowed if it makes you comfortable. The stadium will be fully secured. No justice, no peace. We want ICE off our streets. January 20th, 2 p.m., Marv Stadium. Enter through the south gates. Email a Rory Gagan at GEYGAN.1 at uaschools.org for more information or to get more involved. I put this stupid little flyer in the last Substack article. We should email this Rory person and let them have it. This is absolutely incredible. I can't stand these people. I just can't. They're so dumb. God, are they dumb. And I hope that every single citizen who walks out, whatever, working citizens, if they walk out at 4 p.m. before their contracted time to leave, that their employers fire them. Again, as I've said before, these individuals are not walking out or demonstrating against illegality. They're walking out and demonstrating illegality. They're openly supporting it. They should be walking out because board members and whomever, business owners, whatever, are fraudulent and are stealing their taxpayer dollars, but they don't seem to care about that. Again, these people operate on feelings over facts. It doesn't matter if they're being robbed at gunpoint, they would still support the person robbing them at gunpoint. Case in point, Anissa Liban, one of the Westerville City Schools board members in Westerville, Ohio. I received through an open records request and through a contact up there her post-general report. This is the BOE file report data for the Friends of Anissa Liban. I will throw this in another Substack article probably tomorrow. But after the election, she was still receiving money, upwards of $34,923.03, and she has spent $32,103.45 of that money. Again, she was still receiving contributions back in October, before the election, of course, and then her expenditures continued even after the election. Now, let me read you some of these, and you can determine whether or not they sound suspicious to you, because they should be. You have unemployed people, again, still donating $100. Seems interesting. Again, in-kind description and employer, some of them, again, the way that they write it is very funny. They'll say self-employed, or they'll say unemployed. But if you're self-employed, what's the thing you do? What's the good or service that you produce? They don't even write that in. They just say self-employed. A person just says transportation. Well, what's the transportation company that you work for? There has to be one. Another person here donated $300 and it simply says logistics. Logistics for whom? Another person says pharmacist. A pharmacist for what company? They don't even, again, they don't write that in. It's incomplete at face value. Customer relations, a $1,000 donation, electronic transfer. Most of these are electronic transfers. Customer relations for whom exactly? And look, healthcare, homemaker, unemployed. It just goes on and on and on. Now here's the expenditures, and this is odd too. Anissa Liban's group here was still giving out thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to campaign consulting, marketing, you name it, not just in Ohio, but in Minneapolis, Minnesota also, and in other cities in Ohio. For example, it says Murphy and Associates, LLC, 120 West 2nd Street, Suite 1650 in Dayton, Ohio. On December 2nd, a month after the election, they paid this group $1,500. And it says campaign consulting. Why? Why are you paying them that amount of money? See, this is the aspect of this too that I think is being lost on some, which is that law firms are directly tied to this fraud also. They're facilitating this. She paid Precision Media and Public Relations on South Front Street in Columbus, Ohio, $5,000, and it says digital media is the reason. $740 for election night event security on November 4th and 5th. What? More marketing, $3,800 for marketing out of Columbus, Ohio. So marketing agencies allegedly are wrapped up in this money laundering also. This is astounding to me. And then, of course, the Witching Hour Consulting, which I already brought up before, but yeah, $250, which is run by a fellow board member, Louise Valentine. Imagine that. A Somali board member is paying another board member $1,000 total for campaign consulting. Lastly, there's this, and I brought this person up in a previous Substack back on November 3rd in my Substack article titled The Incompatibility of Islam and American Schooling, the ongoing Muslim infiltration within American schools and school boards. There was an individual who was running for the Westerville City School District who lost, but her name is Nafisio Jamali. Again, she ended up losing. She didn't raise nearly what Anissa Liban raised. However, she apparently paid herself a campaign contribution. She's listed, and again, this was brought to my attention by a source up there, but she's listed as the CEO and administrator of Sunset Healthcare Services, Inc. Again, healthcare services, childcare. Isn't that odd? Friends of Nafisio Jamali, Sunset Healthcare Services, 2151 East Dublin Granville Road, Suite 204, in the amount of $11,000. $9,000 was the loan on 10/9/25, and then $2,000 more 6 days later, for a total of $11,000 to herself. So she's taking taxpayer money from a fraudulent business, which we can guess it's fraudulent, and then she's using that to pay herself a campaign contribution to the tune of $11,000. Arrest these people. Just arrest them. Anyway, I'll put together a little Substack article about that, probably again on Friday or Saturday, just to, again, get the documentation out there so people can at least see it. And then, of course, I'll send it off to the Secretary of State's office and see what they do. But Anissa Liban in particular has got to go. We're talking about the RICO statute here. It's beyond evident. You don't get campaign donations from a taxi driver in Seattle, Washington. It doesn't happen. You don't get campaign donations from unemployed people and healthcare services in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Follow the money and arrest these people. Now, let me do this real quick, sort of in conclusion, just kind of two things. I want to spend just a second on the passing of Scott Adams. I guarantee that Scott Adams saw my school board speech from August of 2021. I'm certain. He got very hot and bothered about people's reaction to all of that tyranny, which is exactly what it was, and of course him being on the wrong side of it, so much so that it cost him his life. Again, I'm not going to make fun of the departed, but what I will say is this. When you leap before looking, that's exactly what you should expect. He said it, I believe, last summer. He was saying that he didn't think he was going to live much longer, 5 more months maybe, whatever. And he openly, again, struck it up to the shots. It took him a while to arrive at that conclusion, but eventually he arrived at that conclusion. And again, he was pretty much an atheist most of his life. He accepted Christ at the very end. You know, rather convenient, I suppose, but either way, now he knows the full-blown truth one way or another. It should never happen that way. It should never be that way. And again, very famously, he was on videos even criticizing those who again refused to take the shots and stood their ground. And he openly stated again that they were on the winning side. I take offense to that because no one wins in this. That entire operation was done against all of us, not knowing, many people of course not knowing, that the scheme was way worse than what we even experienced. What we experienced was bad enough. People killed themselves because they lost their businesses for an illness that doesn't exist, because they were told to close their businesses. The suicide alone, directly wrapped up with the entire COVID lie, is enough, should be enough, for every American to take to the streets and hang every politician publicly. But that's not going to happen. Including, of course, the law enforcement who very illegally enforced any ordinance or XYZ. But again, for someone like a Scott Adams or anybody to say when government says jump, you say how high, to that person I say you're dead wrong. Emphasis on the word dead. It's also ironic that given people's knowledge base, and even individuals, again, professional backgrounds and current circumstances, you would think that at looking at that the individual who ended up taking the shot, that those people might not necessarily be the ones who take them. For example, I know individuals who are very holistic when it comes to medicine, and yet they lined up and took the shots, multiple doses. Scott Adams himself, in his entire Dilbert cartoon, which brought me great joy, certainly within the last, I would say, well, certainly, I guess it was the first couple of years after I left the education profession, I would read his cartoons on a regular basis, and it would put a huge smile on my face because his cartoons exemplified exactly what the education business is all about. The way they communicate, all the bullshit, all of it. It was hilarious. It was very, very funny. But in reading his cartoons, you would think to yourself, well, wait a minute, this guy doesn't like corporations, he doesn't like government, he can see through the bullshit, so there's no way he'd line up for the shots. But he did. And it cost him his life. A slow and painful death. So again, cumulative risk. And no one won in this. There was no winning side. Everybody lost. And everybody will lose something if they haven't already. So with that aside, I want to read this in conclusion. This was a Great Awakening post, I think, that describes, again, the fact that we are approaching the precipice and everything that comes with it. It says the following here: are we approaching the precipice? We are rapidly approaching the precipice. How many times over the years have you asked yourself why? Why, Jesus, did you wake me up from my slumber only to isolate me? Once awakened, did you ever wonder if you had been mistaken? It has been a long, arduous road. Whether you wanted the responsibility or not, it is now yours. The precipice is only weeks away. A lifetime of conditioning and brainwashing will require a profound scare event to awake the blue-haired, latte-sipping, independent woman and her feminist husband. Who will stand as the calm in the storm? Who will remain composed and reassuring amid the chaos? We will. We are that calm. You witnessed the coincidences, far too many to dismiss as mere chance. God has gifted us with minds attuned to pattern recognition. In the coming storm, do not doubt yourself. When the news warns of an impending nuclear World War III involving Russia, the US, China, you can reassure your family that everything will be all right. If they ask you how you know, never reply with, Q said this is a movie, quote unquote. That won't provide the comfort they need in that moment. Instead, tell them, because God cradles us in his hands. Express your unwavering faith in Jesus. Your serenity will draw them in. They will feel it, be attracted to it, and want to emulate it. I believe this is our calling, to guide and help others through what lies ahead, and we will fulfill it, unquote. I'll leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to continue to get busy. It's never ending, it's nonstop, and it's at breakneck speed. So buckle up, because this is going to be a bumpy ride. But there's a lot of great things coming, no doubt about it. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care, and God bless.